prosecution that they thought with all that investigation they had figured something out. One thing you're going to see with all this dense foliage, it's a little thinner now than it was back then, that runs along the side of this house. There's a lot of berries. These berries from these Eugenia plants, they were all over the floor of this walkway. Once again, there was no blood going down here. You see the thickness of the foliage here. It would have been pretty difficult to come over this wall, this fence. If you take a good look at this fence also, you'll see that it's sort of tied off at the top. And it's pretty sharp here at the top, and you would think that anyone who was trying to come over this fence could have had some problems with hurting themselves on this wire. And of course, there was no blood. You would imagine this person was covered in blood. There'd be some blood or some fibers or something there. Here we have this air conditioning unit, which we've heard a lot about. Once again, when I was talking about that A&E 2-hour special that I saw the other night on the trial, and Bill Curtis made a point there saying this was a unit that Cato Kalin heard 3 loud thumps from. Well, Cato Kalin at no time in this trial said that he heard 3 loud thumps from the air conditioning unit. Once again, that was one of Marcia Clark's theories. She said that. What Cato actually said, and he demonstrated when he was on the stand with the table in front of him, that he heard 3 loud bumps, sort of like that. I don't know what that could have been. Maybe it was a signal. I have no idea. But he never said that he heard anyone hit this air conditioning unit. That was a theory of Marcia Clark's. Now let's take a good look at this air conditioning unit. You can see there's some slats here. They face outward. It's head high. So one would think if anyone ran back here in the dark and ran into this unit, that they should have sustained some type of bruise, some type of injury. And of course, if they were bloodied and had blood on them, there should have been some fabric or some blood on that unit. Right down here, about 4 or 5 feet from this unit, is where they found, or where they claim to have found, the glove. One very interesting thing about that glove, there was no debris on it. There was a lot more here then than there is now. And one key thing about that glove, when Furman saw it, he said it was still wet. It was thick. We did some experiments with that with experts, and they all told you that there was no possible way 7 hours later after this crime that glove could still have blood on it, could still be wet and still be bloody. That was, I think, an experiment that I can't recall now if we really got it into evidence or not, but we know, and the public should know, that that was an experiment that was done, and it proved that that glove should have been dried by that time in the morning. Now, let's go around front again, and I'll show you some more interesting things. One other point I should say, once again, these berries that were here were also at Nicole's house. If someone walked out of that or walkway to the side of her house, and if they went into that Bronco, there should have been some debris, some leaves, some berries. The same should have been detected in my home. I have some very light carpeting, which I'm going to show you in a minute. If someone ran through here and then went right into my house and went up that carpeting, stepping on these berries, one would think there'd be some trace of that on this very light carpeting. Let's go around front. Before we go into my foyer and talk about more of the so-called blood evidence, since we're out here, let me cover a few things that sort of came into the trial that there was a little sarcasm about me hitting golf balls. Shortly after I got home, I would say 10 o'clock, a little after 10 o'clock, I came out here. I was actually looking for a sand wedge. I had recently got some new clubs, Callaway Big Bertha irons, and I didn't like their sand wedge, and I wanted to go back to my old Callaway sand wedge. I also wanted to change my 3-wood. I'd gone into my garage and I'd gotten an old 3-wood, Wood Brothers, sort of a custom-made club, even though the head was kind of beat up. I walked out here to my Bentley. I opened the trunk up where I had a lot of golf clubs, which the police had confiscated at some later time, and I couldn't find my sand wedge, and I took a pitching iron. I was looking for some balls. I play with a ball called MaxFly 100. I had no new MaxFly balls, even though I have a closet full of other balls that I'd never used. But I did have a couple of bags of balls in the trunk of my car, balls that I had already used. Normally I play 2 sleeves of balls per round of golf, so some of the balls that I would throw away, other people would think were great golf balls. I went through that bag and tried to pick some unscuffed balls. I picked about 5 or 6 unscuffed balls. I put them in a little bag that I had in the trunk of my car that had a windbreaker in it, a Hertz windbreaker in it. I put those balls in that bag. I took the pitching wedge, and I took about 4 or 5 other balls, and I walked over here. I dropped the bag right around here, a bag incidentally we brought into the courtroom, but since Alan Park claimed he never saw that bag and couldn't identify it, Judge Ito wouldn't allow us to put it into evidence. But anyway, I brought 4 or 5 balls, scuff balls, drop them here. Normally I have a net here that my son Justin will hit balls into, and I do a lot of chipping around here, and I began to chip those 5 or 6 balls away. I chipped a couple of them over into the sand. I actually hit a full hit and hit one over this tree onto Mrs. Neberker's property, which is across Ashford. Curiously enough, the police found some golf balls the next day. You never saw that in evidence, though, but I saw it in one of their discovery property reports. They found some of those golf balls. I actually sculled one, hit some of the playground equipment, and I had recently gotten all the dents out of my car. I was cringing trying to figure out where that ball had gone. At that point, I walked back to my Bentley. I put the club back in my Bentley. I actually left both the white bag as well as the other bag down here. No one ever mentions that white bag. We'll get to that a little later. And I then walked out and looked into my back of my Bronco to see if I had any clubs there, and my dog was out. We ended up walking back into my Ashford gate, because I normally keep one of the gates on a hinge, and then I went into the house. Now, hitting golf balls took all of 2 minutes, all of about 2 minutes at the most, and I may have been outside between trying to find the club in the trunk of my car, being in my garage, picking balls that were unscuffed, coming over here, hitting golf balls, looking into my Bronco, and walking back into my house. No more than 10 minutes, that whole period of time.
And at the same time, he said almost simultaneously, he saw a person approximately 6 feet tall, 200 pounds, African American, wearing all dark clothing, walking at a good pace up the driveway. Now, at the same time that you saw Cato Kalin in the side yard, did you see anything else?
Yes, I saw a figure come down, well, not come down, but I saw a figure come into the entranceway of the house, just about where the driveway starts.
Can you show us on this diagram where you first saw that person?
Just if you go where the circle is, you go straight back, no, the other way. A little bit farther. It was about there. Around that area.
As I walk down my driveway, as you can see, it's easy to see me. Alan Park testified on the stand that he had a view from the end of my garage right up here, actually to the front of my house. And this is, I guess, represents some of the biggest frustration I had, not only during the trial, but after the trial, when Marcia Clark tried to create some impressions that, fortunately, the jury didn't buy it. Unfortunately, the pundits bought it. They sold it to you. And a lot of people out there, I see in interviews that we do on Man on the Street, they ask this question. You notice that Ross Becker asked me, who was the shadowy figure that came across the driveway? Bill Curtis, who did a very fine 2 hours on A&E, even felt, I asked a question at one point about a shadowy figure coming down the driveway or across the lawn and entered the house. One guy even said, who was the guy Alan Park saw climb the wall? The facts are, nobody, at no time I should say, did Alan Park indicate that he saw anybody climb the wall, come down a driveway, cross a lawn, or even come across the driveway. That was a figment of Marcia Clark's, in her mind, and she tried to sell that to you, and unfortunately a lot of you people bought that. What Alan Park testified to, that there was a person that was right about here. He put an X on an exhibit to prove it. Right here was where my golf bags were placed, where I walked out of my house, put my suit bag down, looked into my golf bag. When he was let into my property by Cato Kalin and they arrived here, right here was a suit bag, which Alan Park thought was a duffel bag, As we know now, it was a suit bag. Later on, you saw me on the plane and got off the plane with it, and my golf bag. That's all he saw. In the time he arrived here was 10:20. I guess he was here until after 11 o'clock. That is the only activity outside of my house that he witnessed. Now let's go inside.
How much blood did you withdraw from Mr. Simpson?
Approximately 8 cc's.
You say approximately. You did not measure the amount?
Well, it could have been 7.9 or it could have been 8.1. I just looked at the syringe and looked at about 8 cc's. I withdrew the needle from his arm.
Nobody asked you to take a precise amount of blood? And you did not record the amount of blood you took?
No. It's just routinely, that's about the amount I usually draw.
And you do this on a routine basis every day? Do you do this every day in the jail, take blood?
Oh, whenever, not for this sort of thing. It's usually for alcohol, blood alcohol.
But you do take blood on a regular basis. And you take the same amount of blood?
Yes. Another test tube kept putting in water until it looked approximately as to what I had drawn. I measured that, and that was about 6.5 cc's. So I estimated that's what I really had drawn.
So, after you had done this, what conclusion did you come to?
I came to the conclusion that I was wrong in the statement I made, that I didn't draw 8 cc's, that I drew about 6 to 6.5.
I just looked at the syringe, and it looked at about 8 cc's.
That was
Remember
that statement, which I shouldn't have made. I looked at it, I should have said it looked like it was enough, which it was enough. Yeah. 8 cc's, I was wrong in that 8 cc's altogether.
How many times have you taken blood from Parker Center out to a crime scene?
I don't know. This may have been the first time. I don't know. I can't recall right now any other times that I've done that.
So now you're saying that Mr. Simpson's gray manila envelope with the blood sample in it was put into that black plastic trash bag that Miss Mazzola was carrying?
To the best of my recollection, yes.
And did you place it in the trash bag in her sight, in her presence?
I don't think so. I don't recall.
You just said, I don't think so, and then you said, I don't recall.
That's right.
You told us that one would expect that these swatches, having been put in a test tube at 6:30 p.m. on June 13th and removed at 7:30 a.m. on June 14th, to be dry.
Yes.
Given that fact,
Given that opinion,
what is your opinion about the existence of these transfer stains?
Overall.
Only opinion I can giving under this circumstance, something wrong.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Well, as I enter the foyer of my house, we're going to go back and talk about blood drops. I think it should be noted that at no time did they count the swatches that they used to collect these blood drops at Bundy, in the driveway here, or anywhere in this case. And the next day when they processed these blood drops or these swatches, they did it in the same area that they had my reference vial. And I'm told by DNA experts that that is a no-no. Now, if you come down here, I'm going to place this picture down at this spot here. This picture shows 3 blood drops that they said that they found in my foyer right about this spot. As you can see by my thumbnail, which is bigger than these pegs, that these are pretty small drops. And I believe it was Michael Batten that testified that that would be indicative of a small paper cut, certainly not of a big cut. I think we should also point out that it was in this area that Detective Van Adder claimed that he turned over my reference vial to Dennis Fung. Now, I guess it was in a garbage bag or something, and they gave that to Andrea Mazzola, who took it out even though they never told her that a reference vial was in that bag. When Andrea Mazzola was asked, did you see this exchange take place? She testified that for that 1 minute, we call it the Mazzola minute, she went into the other room, sat on the couch, and closed her eyes. Sort of a variation on see no evil and hear no evil. Incidentally, they checked all of these items, the doorknob, the light switches, as we move over to my staircase, the rug, my banister, checked all of these items for blood, and of course, no blood found. And if you look at this carpeting, it's a little more plush than the carpeting that was in my Bronco. Those Bruno Magli shoes had some ridges in them. You would have thought that if there was some blood in there anywhere, that this carpeting would have picked up some of it, and of course it didn't. Now let's go up to my bedroom.
In Mr. Simpson's master bedroom area, did you see someone walking around with a videotape camera?
I don't recall when I saw the videotape camera coming through. I do recall it being there, though.
You recall a gentleman named Mr. Ford. Do you know him?
Yes, I do.
African-American gentleman?
Yes.
And he was the one that was carrying around the video camera?
Yes.
You have no recollection whatsoever of them, of Mr. Ford with the video camera up in the master bedroom at or around the time that you were doing collection?
Again, I didn't keep track of Mr. Ford at that time.
Have you seen that videotape?
No, I have not.
Have you had discussions with anybody about that videotape?
No.
Have you had any discussions with people at SID about what's shown on that videotape?
No.
Have you had discussions with anyone in the district attorney's office as to what's shown on that videotape?
No.
Has anybody anywhere communicated to you anything about whether or not at 4:14 in the afternoon those socks are depicted on that videotape?
No one has communicated that information to me or with me.
Has anybody indicated to you there's some question as to whether or not those socks are on the videotape? So I believe it was your testimony on direct examination that you collected the socks sometime between 4:30 and 4:40.
About then, yes.
And then before you left the residence, you collected two other items, numbers 15 and 16, and those were at 5 and 5:05.
Then we come to those socks. Those socks. They just don't fit. They just don't fit. They just don't fit. Watch with me now a video. I want you to watch the time counter in this time frame, and you'll understand how important this is. This is Mr. Willie Ford going up into the bedroom. It's 3:13, which he says is 4:13 because it hadn't been changed. This is 4:13 p.m. on June 13th, 1994. Okay, thank you, Howard. You look at the foot of the bed there, where the socks are supposed to be. You'll see no socks in this video. And you'll recall that Mr. Willie Ford testified about this. And I asked him, well, where are the socks, Mr. Ford? I didn't see any socks. So now, that's interesting, isn't it? At 4:13, on June 13th, 1994, these socks, they supposedly recovered. These mysterious socks. These socks that no one sees any blood on until August 4th, all of a sudden. These socks that are picked up, that Looper says he picks them up because they just look out of place. I don't have any reason to pick them up. I'll just take these socks. They're out of place.
Well, as I come up my stairs, white carpeting all the way, banister, they checked everything, and no blood. Now, come with me into my bedroom. Now, this is my bedroom. Incidentally, I believe this is a book that every American should read. This is the room, and this is the area, basically, where the police claim to have found the socks. Even they admit that these socks seem somewhat out of place. What's interesting about that is a videographer named Willie Ford, a police officer, was here at 4:13. He photographed the entire room. He didn't see any socks. No one told him to try to avoid stepping on any socks. And if you look at that video, what I find very curious is the video goes right up to the point where you would see the socks. The video goes off, and about 4 or 5 feet beyond that, the video begins again. So just that crucial area where the socks would have been, you don't see. What's key about Willie Ford being here at 413 is Andrea Mazzola and Dennis Fong in their log show that they collected the socks after 4:30. After 4:30. Where were those socks when Willie Ford was in this room? Another point I'd like to make about this videographer. Throughout this trial, we asked for film. Was there any film taken? This is for you pundits and you people out there that say the police won't cover up and they're forthcoming all the time. We asked on TV, in the courtroom, out of the courtroom, time and time again, were there any film? Were there any videographer here? Was there any film taken? And they denied it, they denied it, they denied it. Willie Ford is a Afro-American or African-American, a big man with a video camera. I find it hard to believe that you can miss this guy. Now, months and months later, we're looking at some still pictures. And lo and behold, what do we see in one of these still pictures? A picture of a videographer, Willie Ford, in this house taking pictures. Now, I submit to you, there are police all over this house, all over the place. There were police officers who directed this man on what pictures to take, what pictures not to take. We're on national TV time and again. We made requests for, was there any video taken? Was there any film taken at these scenes? And the police denied it. They denied it. They denied it, even though obviously many of them knew there was some video taken. Their excuse was a police officer said he threw it in his drawer and he forgot about it. He forgot about it. One other point before I leave my bedroom. Now, this is my bedroom. As you notice, it faces east. It faces my swimming pool and my tennis court, and the entry to my house is to the west. Now, perceptions in this case has really had an interesting effect on the public and on the pundits. I think it was Alan Park that mentioned that when he drove up, he couldn't see any lights on in my house. And, of course, Marcia Clark took that, as she does often, and before the trial was over, it was a definitive. There was no lights on in his house. Tom Brokaw found that very interesting, because he stated after our aborted interview, my aborted interview with NBC, that was a question he wanted to ask me. Why were you getting dressed in the dark? There was no lights on in the house, and I want to show you something to answer that. That was a question he wanted to ask me. Why were you getting dressed in the dark? There was no lights on in the house, and I want to show you something to answer that. Now, we have so much ground to cover here, it would be simply impossible to cover it all in this period of time. There's so many things that I want to talk about. I'm going to take a little opportunity right now to attempt to cover some things that are very important to me. I realize that during the interview portion of this case, we're going to have an awful lot of criticism that Ross Becker didn't cover some areas, but I'll tell you, in that period of time, there's days worth of questions in this case that I would like to address, and I'm sure in the not too distant future I will be addressing those things. And I don't care who did this interview, it would have been virtually impossible to cover all of the issues. But as I say, there's some things that are very close to me that I would like to attempt to cover in this next half hour or so. As I mentioned earlier, when we were upstairs, there's something about this room and the lighting in this room that I'd like to go into right now. It seemed to be very important to Brokaw, and Marcia Clark seemed to do her normal thing, refer to it erroneously or inaccurately, I should say, throughout this trial, and that's the lighting that was here that night. I believe Alan Park said words to the effect that he didn't see or he couldn't detect any lighting in the house, not that there was no lights on. Probably would have been the correct way to state it, because from that front gate, either one of my two gates, it would have been virtually impossible. It is impossible, and we're showing you that now. This is a view that he would have had of my house, but it's impossible to tell if any lights are on in my bedroom. As a matter of fact, I think I can turn on 90% of the lights on in my house, in my living room, my dining room, in my family room, my pool room, my bathroom, my bedroom, and from the street, you would not notice that. From the street, what you can see is my daughter's room upstairs, Sydney Brooks. You can see my office and the kitchen. It bothered me when I was in court. I would go back to my cell, and Marcia would say time and time again, there was no lights on in the house, and when that shadowy figure had entered the house, lights went on all over the house, and I was saying, boy, how can she say that? That's not true. You can't tell when lights come on all over my house. The only rooms you can see is the kitchen, and since I wasn't packing a picnic to go to Chicago on, I didn't go in the kitchen and turn on any lights. I didn't go into my office, which is the lower left room in my house, looking at it. So those lights didn't come on, and upstairs there was no reason to go into Sidney Brooks' room because she was on Bundy. But I knew that the lamps were on in my house, and as you can see, you can put the lamps on in my entry, you can put the lamp on in my kitchen, you can put on all the other lights on in my house, and there is just no way for someone who was at either one of those gates to, one, see it, detect it, or testify that no lights were on. So Tom Brokaw, I hope that answers your question. I was not getting dressed in the dark. Park did say he thought he saw some light upstairs. He didn't know what it was, and I believe there was probably lights coming out of my bedroom to the front of the house. So Marcia, you can stop saying there was no lights on in my house. It was completely dark, and possibly, even though I know that the entry lamp was on, possibly I may have hit my foyer. It's not really a chandelier, it's an antique piece there, and maybe that threw some more light on over the upstairs window or the closet that's next to my front door. I really can't say, but enough of the lights. Let's talk about opportunity. Marcia Clark and the prosecution team sort of went out of their way to establish that I had plenty of opportunity. I'll tell you, there certainly would have been many more opportune times if I was bent to commit a crime, which I didn't, such as this. I certainly wouldn't have picked this time to do it. I think it was very important for them to make this crime take place at 10:15. They went out of their way to establish that with a barking dog, a welling dog, I guess was the word, and they avoided some witnesses, some key witnesses, people who walked by the scene, people who were walking their dog, Heister, the young couple on their first date, people coming out of dinner parties that night. They went out of their way to avoid calling those witnesses, and when these witnesses came forward, they went out of their way to attempt to discredit these witnesses, to accuse them of trying to interject themselves in this case to make money, which I found sort of ironic. None of these people, including witnesses that were on the airplane, who copyrighted his notes. None of these people have gone out to try to make a dime on this case, but who went out and pimped it immediately. Marcia Clark, Darden. These guys went out immediately and made millions of dollars. Now, I don't begrudge them that. I truly do not begrudge the defense team and the prosecution team for making money, but I think it's somewhat hypocritical of these people to try to cast aspersions on all of these other people, accuse them of trying to do it when they had their agents and they immediately took advantage of the celebrity that they received during this trial. Also during that opportunity, let me throw in this. The whole neighborhood knows my white Bronco. Knew it then. I'd spend much of the spring at Nicole Bundy's house, more there than I did at my house. Everyone knew that car. That'd be the last car that I would drive secretly if I was going to attempt to commit a crime. And Johnny did something during this case when he put a knit hat on his head. I submit to you that I could be 2-3 blocks away with a knit hat on my head, and people would be saying, "Hey, there's OJ. See him down there with the knit hat on his head." It's, I don't know, I thought it was ridiculous. Let's talk about the media a little bit, and this is sort of a pet peeve of mine. I mean, I was being barbecued from day one on the media, and I had always understood the media is supposed to be reporting the facts, you know, without interpretation. Well, that certainly didn't happen in this case. Every place you look, there was interpretations. Everybody was putting their spin on it time and time again from the very beginning. Now, you expect some things. You take with a grain of salt, for the most part, stories you'll see in the tabloids, the National Enquirer, the Star, the Globe, and those tabloid publications. But I can tell you flat out, time and time again in this case, and this is something you're going to hear a little more about because that will be my next litigation, my battle or my fight to get justice from these publications, because they didn't shade the truth. They didn't interpret evidence. They flat out lied. Time and time again. They made up stories. Once they made up stories, some of the video tabloid shows, some under the guise of legitimate interview shows, they ran with those stories. They brought in psychiatrists and analysts to analyze why OJ did various things during the trial and since the trial, things that I didn't come close to doing. Just recently, there was a big story about me attempting suicide in the National Enquirer. That's a flat-out lie. I will put everything that I own. You can come in here, National Enquirer, and interview me daily. You can take everything I own. If you can show me anything in that story that's true, any doctor who's ever entered this house to help me, my daughter, you bring my kids into it, my son on Thanksgiving that I went to his house and wasn't welcome, that's totally false. His mother, Marguerite, her husband, Anthony, myself, and my daughter, and a couple of my daughter's girlfriends, we spent Thanksgiving together, and later on when some of the other younger kids came, we didn't watch any football, we left, the mother and I. Marguerite and I left, but never have I attempted suicide in any way, shape, or form. I saw stories where Neiman Marcus denied me the right to shop after hours. One, I never called Neiman Marcus to do that. Two, the manager of Neiman Marcus called me to apologize for the story, to say it wasn't true, and to say I was more than welcome to come in there. I guess what bothers you, you can see a Jay Leno make jokes. It was painful to me, but I didn't think there was any real malice in the jokes that he was making. You see a Howard Stern, a guy that, hey, he's irreverent about everything. And even though I didn't like it, I thought some of it was vicious. That's Howard Stern. So to an extent, you understand it. It's the legitimate press, people under the guise of journalism, people like Newsweek magazine and Time magazine. I mean, what was that all about? Time magazine, as if this crime wasn't bad enough. They darkened my picture. They put my picture on the cover. What was the purpose of that? The darker you are, is that the more sinister and evil that you might be? I mean, it's embarrassing almost. This is Time magazine. Newsweek is a magazine that I subscribe to, and time again, I'll talk a little about that in a second, they just wrote stories. I think one of the most racist stories that I had ever read under the guise of journalism, they wrote in August of '94. In that story, they accused me of going to the University of Southern California, a white school. They implied because I wanted to be white. The University of Southern California were one of the most storied sports histories of any school in the country. The first All-American in the early 20th century at USC was Bryce Taylor, a black man. So many great athletes, white, black, minorities, have gone in and out of that university, and I went there because I thought it was the best university that I can go for an education and for the athletic tradition there. They accused me in this article for taking diction lessons because I want to sound white. Now, many of you out there wrote me in my early days in television, especially on Monday Night Football, told me you were fans of mine, but you wish I would work on my diction. Like most actors, like most people who work in television, in the movies, I took that to heart, and I hired a diction coach so I wouldn't embarrass you or myself or my family by my diction. There's a lot of ghetto in the way that I talk, but they accused me of trying to be white. Sir Laurence Olivier, to the day he died, every morning started off with his voice coach, and I don't think there's any black person working in television, a white person who's serious about that craft that doesn't work on their diction and their voice, but they said it because I wanted to be white or act more white or sound more white. In there was some pictures, one with a group of women at a charity affair. I think they were with Hawaiian Tropic, and they implied that I was looking for sleazy women looking for stuff. A couple of those women called Larry King and said that they approached me for the picture, and I didn't attempt to date them or hit on them in any way, shape, or fortune. Not that I'm not above that. And probably the thing that was most embarrassing to me, they cropped a picture of me with what we call a comedy stripper in front of me. A stripper. Let me tell you about that night. That happened in my backyard. We were celebrating mine and Al Cowling's 40th birthday, Nicole and my 10th year together, Denise Brown's 30th birthday, Joe Stellini's 50th birthday, Arnell Simpson and Tanya Brown, Nicole's sister's graduation from high school. We had 400 of our friends and family there. We were on the stage. Nicole thought it was funny and sent this comic stripper. My family was there. Her family was there. All our friends was there. And what do? They crop this picture to try to imply that here I am hanging in some sleazy area with strippers, and all our family was there, and they knew exactly what they were doing, and all our family was there, and they knew exactly what they were doing when they did that. It was totally embarrassing. And the TV people, I mean, I'm a big fan of Katie Couric's. The day I got out of jail, the day after I should say, that the verdict came in, I picked up my kids. I didn't go to any bakery, even though I saw some nice young kids say that I was in a bakery. I didn't go to any bakery. I went straight up to Mulholland Drive. I picked up my kids. We met there, and we went to a friend's house. That night, we slept together. The next morning, we were up early, as kids are prone to be. My son Justin wanted me to go into a video arcade room that was at this house and play with him. And Sydney Brooke, my daughter, wanted me to get into jacuzzi with her. While I was trying to debate with the kids which I would do, because I didn't want to get into the jacuzzi, the housekeeper came out and said, "OJ, Mr. Simpson, would you come in here?" I walked into this kitchen, and I saw Katie Couric sitting with a woman named Sheila Weller, an author. And what this Sheila Weller was reporting, secondhand, I guess, from an informed source that was another writer from some paper in New York, was that night I had returned to Laguna at 2 a.m. in the morning, that the Browns were worried. They didn't know where we were. I didn't call. And when I arrived at my daughter, Sydney Brooke, my daughter was traumatized. These people are resorting. I hear this hypocrisy about the kids. You should think about these kids. And these people are using my kids, lying on my kids to make money. They said that we arrived at 2 a.m. that night. Now, if I was a mother or a parent anywhere in America, I'm watching the Today Show. I expect to get facts. I expect honest reporting on this show. I would be very upset. I wouldn't blame any woman in America that moment to hate O.J. Simpson. How could he do this to his kids? When the facts of the matter, it was a flat-out lie. My kids were with me, and when the person I was with called NBC to say this isn't true, he knew people at NBC, he was told, "How do you know it's not true?" That's the standard now. How do you know it's not true? That shouldn't be the standard. Now, let's talk about motive. Something that Darden had a comment on, and at one point in this case, especially during his closing statements. I'm going to take a little time here and try to tell you and give you a picture of my relationship with Nicole those last 2.5 years. You heard Darden, jealousy, control. These were the things that he claimed led to me committing this crime. First, I want to say that in the 15 years before 1992, Nicole never at any point in time ever gave me a reason to be jealous. That wasn't Nicole's style. Her mother used to tell me, it's amazing, Nicole doesn't even see any other man. If we had any arguments before that time, it was about things that I was doing, things, a lot of them I wasn't that proud of, but things that I had done during that period of time. In January, it was January 6th of 1992, Nicole and I went to lunch, and she informed me that she wanted to separate, not to have a divorce. She wanted to separate. She said there was nothing that I had done. As a matter of fact, she commended on me on my actions for the previous 2 years, but she felt that she just wanted to be on her own for a while. Of course, I attempted to talk her out of it. She was pretty vehement about doing it. For the next 30 days, we lived together in this house. Near the end of that 30 days, I told her if she didn't file for a divorce that I would, because I didn't want to go a year deciding that we wanted to have a divorce and then go a year trying to get that divorce, and I felt there would be plenty of time in the year that I thought it would take to have a final degree in the divorce settlement, that we would know if we wanted to be together or not. Over the next 3 months, she moved to Gretna Green, and we spent a lot of time together during those 3 months. We had an agreement that if either one of us thought we were going to get into a serious relationship, that we would call the other person, and we would tell that other person. No one can tell you in this period of time, from January of 1992 to May of 1993, nearly a year and a half, that Nicole and I ever had any argument, any single argument about who she was dating, where she was doing, going, where she was traveling to, who she was traveling with, or who I was dating. In that period of time, actually it was in May, I met Paula Barbieri, and she was the only girl that I dated seriously during that period of time. Nicole had numerous people that she dated during that period of time. During late February, Nicole began to send things to me through the kids, cupcakes, musical tapes, and began to call my office and call my home to speak to me. I was in a relationship, a healthy relationship with Paula Barbieri. I had conveyed to Nicole through a letter and through Kathy Randa that I really didn't want to get involved in anything in her life unless it concerned the kids. Nicole didn't accept that. One day, I think it was mid-March, she showed up here and informed me that she didn't like some of the things that was going on in her life, and that she missed me, she loved me, and she wanted us to get back together. I told her that I was not interested in that time. I did love her, but I was in a healthy relationship, and I just wasn't interested in getting back together. Over the next 3 months, Nicole was quite insistent about that. She came to the golf course. She came to my house. I even went to Mexico, and her and her friend showed up in Mexico. Interestingly enough, I never considered that stalking. I never would call that stalking. That was a woman that was in love with a man and felt she wanted to get back with that man. By May of 1993, Nicole had convinced me that maybe we should try it again, and I informed Paula Barbieri about it. We had long discussions about it. We had no fight. She was hurt, and I was even hurt that I had to hurt her, but I felt an obligation to myself, to my kids, and I didn't know exactly how I felt about Nicole, that I must try it. And I told Nicole I would try it for a year, but there was a few conditions. One of the conditions is I wasn't going to let her move back in, because if it didn't work, I didn't want my kids moving in and out. I would try it for a year, and there was only one friend of hers, one person, a female, that I would not socialize with. Not that she couldn't, and she continued to socialize with this person, but I would not socialize with this person. That wasn't Faye Rusnick. Incidentally, for the next year, Nicole and I was together. You hear we were together and split up. That's not so. We never split up. From January 6th of 1992 to May, Mother's Day, whatever that was, in 1993, Nicole and I was apart. We weren't together. In May of 1993, even though we spent a lot of time together in the 2 months leading up to May of 93, Nicole and I got back together. It was a 1-year trial period. I set that time of 1 year. And 1 year to that day, Mother's Day, actually it was the day after Mother's Day in 1994, I told Nicole, after returning from Puerto Rico, and some things that took place that I can't even tell you about. When I was in Puerto Rico, I spoke to Nicole's mother. While I was 3,000 miles away, Nicole was having some problems. I didn't understand them. When I came back, I told her that I just could not do this anymore. I told her I would try through the summer if she would go to therapy. If she would go to therapy. Nicole did not want to go to therapy, so we split up. No problems, no arguments, no nothing. That week we attended a couple of affairs together for our kids. We had dinner together a couple of nights that week. I was told by Kathy Randa that Paula Barbieri was coming in town for one day. I surprised her at the airport, met her, and she wasn't dating anybody, and we decided to give it a shot, to start trying to work to see if we can get back together. The following week, and this is the 30 days preceding Nicole's death, the following week Nicole was ill. She had double pneumonia. I spent that week, when I returned from New York, I believe, going to her house in the morning, bringing her her favorite scones and coffee, and in the afternoon, obviously, to do the homework with the kids and bring her dinner and see if she needed any medication. And I spent much of that week tending to Nicole. She had a birthday that week, and we talked about, you heard so much about this bracelet. Yes, I brought Nicole actually a cigarette lighter, a gold Cartier cigarette lighter for her birthday. But when I was at her house, her kids said, what did we give her? I had a gift for Paula Barbieri that I was going to give her to celebrate our anniversary, when we first met or first dated, which would have been 3 days later. One thing you'll see in her deposition, this piece of jewelry that I brought, this bracelet, went directly, sapphire and diamonds, with jewelry I had previously bought Paula Barbieri. Totally not the type of jewelry I'd ever given Nicole. She even commented on, you never bought me anything like that, but I had no gift from the kids, and I gave her that bracelet. But in any event, for the next week, I went out of town. I came back in town. I was hosting maybe 300 or 400 kids and their parents here at my house for my son's preschool. Nicole came over. Everyone who saw us that day saw two people who got along. Many of them would have probably thought we were still together. I was watching the NBA Finals in here. Nicole came into this living room and laid literally across my lap. People were here. She went upstairs because she was still feeling weak and laid in my bed. Later on that night went home. For the next week, everything was fine with us. And then one night, I think I talked about this a little earlier, she called me. She was pretty upset that Faye Rusnick was attending an affair with us. And of course, Faye never told her that Faye insisted on going to that affair. I didn't like the fact that she called me and yelled at me. I didn't like the fact that my housekeeper, Gigi, came to me complaining that Nicole was upset with her and came to her because she wasn't here one weekend when it was her weekend off. I informed her that you work for me, not Nicole. I had already lost my favorite housekeeper 2 months previous because Nicole came into this house and had a physical confrontation with that person. And it was at that time I decided that I wanted to pretty much cut off any type of communications with Nicole unless it had something to do with the kids. The week of her death, I spoke to Nicole. She called my office. She wanted to make sure that I would be in town for my kids' recital and how many tickets that I might need. I spoke to her later on that week because I was back east in Washington and in Connecticut, and I just found out that Justin's school, his preschool, was having a ceremony for his graduation, and I wasn't able to attend that. Of course, the day of her murder, I saw her at a recital. She saved me a seat that was 2 seats from her. I sat 2 seats from her. I spoke to her family. Other than asking for my ticket, I didn't speak to her. One of the police reports in this case pointed out that Dominique Brown stated that Nicole said to her, "See, OJ won't even talk to me," even though you pundits are out there saying she scorned me that day and that was a trigger for me committing this crime. It was totally the other way around. I wasn't scorning her. I just didn't want to get involved in any conversation with her at that time. Even though at one point, a few times when our daughter was dancing, we looked at each other and sort of mouthed that Sydney was beautiful. When that affair was over, I was outside talking to friends, talking to Dr. Fishman, teasing with Lou Brown, certainly not having any kind of dour personality, not being angry. Fortunately, there was a video that proved that. I will say this, that in the year and a half that Nicole and I was apart, we never argued about any person that she was dating, any person. In the month that Nicole and I was apart leading up to her death, no friend of hers will tell you that I called them about anything. In fact, it was completely the opposite. Her best friend in this world, Cora Fishman, a person who was interviewed by Marcia Clark and Philip Van Adder about this murder, about Nicole's and my relationship, and as she spoke about our relationship, time and time again, Marcia would say to her, interrupt her and say, "Oh, you're not her friend. Oh, how can you say that? This is a woman that has not made a dime off this case. She refused to do anything for money, yet they tried to intimidate her and skewer what she had to say about Nicole's and my relationship." It was Cora that came to me roughly 10 days before Nicole's death and said, "OJ, you need to take Nicole and the kids and get out of LA." I do feel some guilt. I feel guilt because Nicole wanted to move in with me. She made that clear to me and everybody many times during that year from 93 to 94, and I refused. I feel guilt because I didn't listen to Cora Fishman that day. I feel guilt because people like Faye Rusnick was able to say to me, "Nicole loves you, OJ, and you're back with Paula." I feel guilt about a lot of those things, but I do not feel guilt for the murder of Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman. I did not do that. I swear before God, I did not commit these crimes. And I ask you, members of the community, I don't think I'm going to change any of your guys' mind with this tape. I just want you to listen to the facts. I ask the media, just print the facts. People want to know facts, not skewered testimony, not lies, not interpretations, just the facts. And I ask you all, I mean, I've been good to everybody. I don't think there's anybody out there that won't say that wherever they met me, all over this country for the last 30 years, I took time. I treated you the way I wanted to be treated. My mother taught me. I knew religion long before Rosie Greer came to jail. I grew up in Evergreen Baptist Church. I was taught you do unto others, and that's what I've tried to do my entire life. You know, I tried to treat people the way I wanted to be treated. I don't think there's anybody out there that ever met me anywhere, in airports, in ballparks, on the street, that I wasn't kind to you. I didn't treat you the way I thought you wanted to be treated. Anybody who's ever written me, I wrote them back. Charities that ever called me, I always sent them something at my cost. I only asked you to give me that courtesy, to treat me the way I treated you, and I asked the media to print the facts. I'll say to you once again, I have nothing but compassion for the Goldmans and for the Browns, but I lost just as much as you did. I lost more than you did, because I lost a person that I love. I've lost my life, and I've lost my ability, I don't think so, my ability to provide for the people around me. That's all I want to do, provide for my family, my kids, and give me the opportunity and a fair shake to say what I need to say. I listened to what everybody else said. I tried to do that with some dignity. I asked you to listen to me, and you judge. But I swear to you before my God, I did not commit these crimes. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me.